President Trump right now is giving remarks from the White House, from the Oval Office. And as soon as we get those taped remarks, we will play them out for all of you to see. But in the meantime, Democrats are in panic mode, reportedly calling an emergency meeting yesterday of a dozen House Democrats. Now, this comes after that embarrassing display during President Trump's joint address to Congress, including the moment Al Green shouted and waved his cane that led to his censure.
That's your warning. Remove this gentleman from the chamber.
Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered on this Friday. I'm Kayleigh McEnany here with my co-host Emily Compagno. Also joining us, Molly Line, Fox News correspondent, Marie Harf, Fox News contributor and former State Department spokesperson under President Obama. And look who it is for the very first time on the couch, House Speaker Mike Johnson. So good to have you here, Speaker Johnson.
So good to be with you. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, so thanks for the opportunity, ladies.
We've been wanting to have you, and we are quite excited. You know, I woke up this morning, and I'm reading, and, you know, all the congressional publications, Politico, Punchbowl, Axios. Here's what they said happened last night. I was very intrigued by it. This is after the censure of Al Green. You have Politico Playbook citing Axios that says there was a very unhappy House Democratic leadership meeting. They had a come-to-Jesus meeting with a dozen House lawmakers. Punchbowl, elucidating on that, said that this included Maxwell Frost, Jasmine Crockett, two very outspoken Democrats, and they used the word that they were berated for their behavior. How ordinary is it for leadership to berate members of their own party? And were you surprised by this?
I wasn't surprised. It is extraordinary, but they did make fools of themselves on the House floor. And everyone saw it, everyone in the country. It was a reminder to them why we won so decisively in this last election cycle and why they lost. And they're really a party in total disarray, as you see it on vivid display right now. They don't have an identified leader. They don't have any vision for where they're going. They don't have a platform that they can run on because it was repudiated overwhelmingly in the election. So they're sort of flailing about, and it blew up on the House floor, and I think they deeply regret it. At least some of them do. Others apparently didn't get the message of the election.
No, Al Green among them. He becomes the fourth House Democrat to be censured in the last 4 years. And Hakeem Jeffries, your counterpart on the other side of the aisle, had this to say about the censure.
The censure resolution put forth by extreme MAGA Republicans is not worth the paper that it was written on.
He says it's not worth the paper, and House Freedom Caucus members are asking to put forward a resolution to remove Al Green from his committee assignments. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the interesting thing is he was censured for disrupting the proceedings of the House. And while I was reading the censure that was voted in, by the way, by 10 House Democrats who joined Republicans in that, they disrupted the proceedings of the House. So there's some irony there. We have to keep decorum. We have to keep control of the proceedings because we're the greatest deliberative body in the world, and we need to act like it. And I think this went way over the line. By the way, these censures, this is not a normal thing. I mean, he was only the 29th member of the House to be censured in the entire history of the U.S. Congress. So it was above the pale. He's the first person to ever be removed from the floor during a presidential address. It was appropriate, and we got to maintain control.
Emily's going to hop in here, but just a quick follow-up. What about his committee assignments? Do you think that's on the table?
Well, I talked to Freedom Caucus members and other Republicans who are deeply concerned about this. They say we have to restore control one way or the other. They need to be real consequences, and it's something we'll be looking at early next week.
Okay. So, Mr. Speaker, it seems that there are some reasonable heads prevailing, right? We have Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow. She says, look, these Democrats are sick and tired of performative nonsense. We don't want to see our elected officials trying to be cute or clever, she says. So back to Tuesday night. Peggy Noonan, Democrat, esteemed WSJ opinion editor, wrote a thoughtful op-ed today where she said, look, I came to 3 conclusions after Tuesday. She said they're not serious people talking about her own party, these elected officials who refused to stand up, who refused to clap. 2, their job was to show they are an alternative to Mr. Trump, and instead they proved why he won. And then her third and most important, she said, they will continue to lose for a long time. And she talked about how to stand and cheer, to show support for these incredible Americans that were there that evening was to show love. And instead, she said, they brought the hate. So my question, to quote the Black Eyed Peas, which I got to see in concert 100 years ago, where is the love, Speaker? And do you think that Democrats will listen to these reasonable voices?
I think most of them won't. And you saw that by their vote. They voted against Century Now Green. They're doubling down, tripling down on their failed policies and their message, and it does not resonate with the people. Peggy Noonan used to be a speechwriter for Ronald Reagan. I mean, she's a pretty keen observer of politics and human nature, and what she's seen here is a trend that no one can deny, that the Democratic Party has left the American people. When I was a kid, I grew up in Louisiana, in the Deep South. There weren't many Republicans. I didn't know many, but that party left the people of my state and every other state over the years, and now they went through that woke progressive nonsense. They went so vigorous and aggressive. It's almost like the pendulum swung all the way to the left and it clicked, and now it's sort of moving back. And what President Trump represents, and our party by extension now, is a force that is moving that pendulum back to what President Trump says is common sense. And that was long overdue. And the people embrace it, and the polls verify that they're in favor of what we're doing, restoring common sense and our conservative principles, which I know that we can demonstrate are good for everyone. It will lead to human flourishing. And then we'll keep these new demographics of folks that we gained in this election cycle and govern for many years to come.
Yeah, Speaker, it's so interesting. A lot of Democrats remember Joe Wilson yelling, "You lie," at Barack Obama, and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert saying some really awful things to Joe Biden. So the State of the Union in general has become a little bit more of a circus, I think. So Democrats will also remember that. But you're right in saying that Democrats are searching for a message and a leader. No, I'm a Democrat. I looked at what happened on Tuesday night and did not like a lot of it, right? What I did like was Alyssa Slotkin, the senator from Michigan, who was the official response, who's a moderate, worked for the George W. Bush CIA, right, worked on Iraq and other intelligence issues. And she came out and said, prices are higher. They're firing veterans all around the country. We are hearing in town halls that voters, Democrats may not be winning them over quite yet, but Republicans are starting to lose them. So I'd love your thoughts on sort of her message. There is a moderate wing of the party, and it was on display in that speech, but also what your members are starting to hear. We're seeing these town halls where members are getting berated. I lived through the Obamacare town halls, and I learned as a Democrat, once you start getting those, canceling town halls, things don't look good for you. So what do you make of sort of this moment and that part of the party, and also how your members are hearing from folks?
Well, look.
And are they going to cancel town halls? I'll
say this. The president is now, 45 days into his administration.
Something like that.
We're transitioning from Bidenomics and the terrible economy that was delivered by the last administration. It takes a while to turn that ship around, but we are doing that. And the Congress is working to codify all the executive orders that the president is doing. But with regard to the town halls, look, we have Republicans who want to go out and be among their constituents and hear their concerns and dialogue with them. It's a big part of the job. But the problem is they're being ambushed right now by what are some, in many cases, paid protesters. You've got George Soros-funded groups. They're very well organized. That's one thing Democrats do very well, is this organization, right? And they go an hour or two early before the event. They fill all the seats. And so the actual constituents of these Republican members can't actually make it into the arenas. And so it's not a productive dialogue at all. They're just walking into an ambush. So we've encouraged our members to think thoughtfully about that. There are a lot of ways now with technology to be in constant dialogue with your constituents. You can do telephone town halls and get 10,000 people on the phone at the same time. You can have small group meetings with industry or organization groups or various parts of your community, and to be very productive. So we want to do the job, do it well, do it efficiently and effectively, and walking into a stage production like that doesn't serve anyone's interest.
Speaker Johnson, I know Molly has a question for you, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. But I noticed something this week. I looked back at Biden's State of the Union last year, and I saw you stand when he mentioned John Lewis. And I saw you stand when he mentioned standing as America to get the hostages freed from Hamas. You were able to recognize those common humanity moments, and it doesn't appear that your colleagues on the other aisle were able to do that for DJ Daniel, a cancer survivor. Why do you think you could recognize that, but they could not?
It's a great question. It was shameful. They didn't stand for the families of, Lake and Riley and victims of crime and all of these things. The hostage who was released after his elderly mother pleaded for all of that from the tragedy in Israel. They missed their opportunity. And look, a State of the Union or a joint address is meant to be, they're supposed to be unifying moments. It's something we all join in together. It used to be a celebrated event of America. And so you look for those moments that you can join and all join together. President Trump provided many of them, and they just sat through it all. And so I think it sent a profound message to the people. It was shameful. And I don't know how they explained their way out of that.
Yeah. Well, we talk about the bingo cards and the waving of the cane. At the same time, there's an opportunity here for more moderate Democrats. Marie was talking about this to come forward and appear sane in comparison. So there is this window of opportunity as the Democrats are trying to figure out where they're going to go and how they get back on the map. And well, they're definitely throwing a little spaghetti against the wall in a lot of different respects. Here we are. We're about to go into a pretty intense period where we're going to be talking about money. This is what Congress does. And there's a lot of criticism right now, and the Democrats want to put language in about how much power President Trump has and what Republicans in Congress will do to rein that in. What do you picture in the coming weeks ahead? Hopefully not any, Serbian legislative smoke bombs being tossed around. Expect a little more peace than that.
Well, that's right. And this illustrates that the radical extremists in the Democrat Party have outnumbered the moderates. There's only a small handful of moderates left, and that's been on display here over and over. And they tried to do it, to your point, in the appropriations process. The Republican appropriators are negotiating in good faith. They're exchanging top-line negotiation numbers back and forth. And about 2 weeks ago, the Democrats threw into this outrageous requirement, this stipulation, hey, we won't fund the government unless you tie the hands of the executive branch, unless you put in all these stipulations and you take away the authority that they're duly allowed in our system. And we're not going to do that. They know we're not going to do that. So it looked like they were trying to engineer a shutdown of the government, which is terribly irresponsible. We're not going to do that. We will be running a clean CR next week. And what that will do is allow the White House time, the administration, to continue the DOGE efforts, finding all these extraordinary levels of savings and waste, fraud, and abuse. We'll be able to incorporate that into the budgeting for FY26, which will start almost immediately after we're done next week. And so that's going to be a great innovation. I think it's going to change the way government works. I was with Elon Musk in his office across this parking lot from the White House about a week ago. Late at night, we're meeting, and I said, we're both getting increasingly excited about all the savings that he's finding. And I said, we're looking at this differently. You think of it as a data analyst and a scientist. I'm looking at this as a constitutional law attorney and a historian. Elon, it's not just about saving money. This is revolutionary. We're going to restore the founders' original vision for the Constitution. They wanted a limited federal government that had careful oversight by Congress, but Congress hasn't been able to do that because they've been hiding the data. He's found it. It's going to change the way we do government.
Speaker Johnson, you had a viral moment with Vice President J.D. Vance during the State of the Union. It was joint address to Congress, I should say. It was a hot mic moment. We want to play that.
By the way, I think the speech is going to be great. But I don't know how you do this for 90 minutes.
The hardest thing was doing it during Biden, when the speech was a stupid campaign speech.
I mean, what's the backstory? Did you not know your mic was hot?
I didn't. They turn these mics off all the time. I didn't know it was on, and
they're always on.
Sorry about that, but I was candid there.
It was candid. Okay. It was funny. And I got to say, my sister who's in social media says organic works. And social media loved that moment.
Oh, dear.
You've joined the ranks of Britney Spears and everyone else who had hot mic moments, Speaker. It's totally cool.
And the ranks of Outnumbered here.
Exactly.
All right. Well, right now, President Trump is giving those remarks in the Oval Office we told you about. He's speaking about the newly released job report and how his administration is, quote, rapidly reversing the damage done by the Biden administration. We will bring you those remarks in full when we get them. But coming up, will Democrats force a government shutdown? I thought they didn't like those.
Well,
the deadline to fund the government is 1 week from today. It's ticking down. And remember, just weeks before Trump took office, this was in December, Democrats accused Republicans of wanting a shutdown.
House Republicans have been ordered to shut down the government and hurt everyday Americans all across this country.
Republican needs to stop playing politics with a government shutdown.
Thanks to Republicans, we're less than 48 hours away from a Christmas shutdown.
And it'll be their fault that Americans don't get disaster relief, that Americans don't get their Social Security checks.
I want us to take a moment to at least appreciate the fact that we've been able to stop another Republican shutdown of the government.
They were dire. Social Security is not going to go out, they said. Now, according to Politico, we're just 4 months from that moment. Democrats appear ready to force a shutdown. Listen to this quote. Democrats are itching for a fight, Politico says. Senior House Democrats have spent recent days privately surveying their members about whether they would be willing to shut down the government. So far, they're encountering little resistance. Usually, shutdown saber rattling originates on the fringes. This time, however, the foment is coming from the leadership table itself. Speaker Johnson, I'm struck by that because that is very true. Fringes advocate for this, and then it just kind of trickles up. But now this is trickling down. And I'm curious if you've heard about this, number one. And number two, as someone in leadership, have you ever tried to orchestrate a shutdown?
Of course not. Democrats don't get irony, right? All the tape is about what they're doing right now. It's a lack of principle, and it's very dangerous. A shutdown doesn't behoove anyone. And the fact that they're trying to orchestrate it illustrates what we said earlier in the first block, that they are flailing. They don't have a vision, a platform, a party. It's in disarray, and they don't have anything else to do. So this is a dangerous thing. We are putting a clean CR on the floor early next week, probably on Tuesday. It will fund the government at current levels because that will allow us, as we said earlier, to make sure all the DOGE cuts and all the new innovations are calculated so we can actually use it in the federal budgeting. That's what they're afraid of, Kayleigh. They don't want us to cut down the size and scope of the federal government because they love that, and we don't. And that's the real peril for them. So they don't have a play. They don't know what to do. And it's really interesting to see them eat their own words like that.
So you say they don't have a play. And I love your sports analogies because many times you've talked about, being the quarterback, Trump's the quarterback, and we're deploying his plans. But I have another sports analogy, and it pertains to your job. And it's about Simone Biles. You are on a balance beam, like Simone Biles, and you got to strike it right down the middle because on one flank you have centrists with the reconciliation process saying don't cut Medicaid, and then you have the more conservative-minded members who are saying we need these cuts. And with the CR, you have the same balancing act. You have Trump, who met with these different elected representatives, and one named Eric Burleson, who's never voted on a CR, came around and said, I'm game now. I use this as an example to say you've got one member. You're on this balance beam. You can only lose one member. You think Tuesday you could manage to do it without losing more than one member?
Yeah, I prefer football metaphors. Okay? But I'll go with the balance beam. Okay, so I'm no Simone Biles, but we'll get this done. And let me tell you why. Because all the Republicans understand. Stephen Miller had a great observation a few weeks ago. He said the thing about governing with a small majority is it's very clarifying.
Yeah.
Everyone will get on board because they understand the strategy. What we're doing is making this play, okay, back to football, so that we can score, right? The big score, winning the game, is changing how Washington works. And we're on the verge of that. And so you have to do it in the proper sequence to make sure that happens. So the playbook we're running right now makes a lot of sense to everybody, and I'm one of those guys. I'm a deficit hawk. But let me say clearly, the president's been clear, we've been clear. We're going to protect Medicaid, okay, for everyone who is eligible to receive that. But what we're going to do is cut out the fraud, waste, and abuse and all of the terrible things that are happening in the program to make it work more efficiently and effectively and to save the program for those who really need it.
Yeah. All right, so let's keep the football analogy. So you can't run a West Coast offense without a good defense, right? So on that line, that Political article went on to say that while leadership, let's say, is allegedly, fomenting the process and saying, guys, we don't want to undercut the court cases against DOGE and Trump right now. We don't want to appear as if we're approving the status quo. But then what happens? What we do is furlough 2 million current federal employees while protesting the release allegedly of a few veterans, right? So at the end of the day, that doesn't seem like a good messaging or a good strategy at all. And as a former federal attorney who went through, attempted furloughs all the time, man, when you get to that 11th hour, it's already wasting everyone's time in the anticipation of it. So how do you see that they play on the leadership front moving forward?
Well, you're trying to apply logic that they don't deploy a lot.
Silly me.
I really think that they're desperate. This lack of a message that they have is being reflected in the place that they're calling on the other side, and they really don't know what to do. They're outnumbered and they're outgunned right now. So we'll see. I mean, I hope that common sense prevails in the end, and they don't do this to shut the government down because it would be harmful for a lot of people. I mean, military members that don't get paid, Border Patrol agents, we finally got control of the border because we have new leadership in the White House, and we have to keep the people, TSA agents, you have to keep the people that are employed by the government that are so important doing their jobs, and that's what's at stake.
Molly,
Switching to the slippery slope as I grew up skiing, there are some mixed headlines, though, that say, like, here's an Axios one. Senate Democrats warm to helping GOP avoid government shutdown. Things are close. They're tight. Do you have some Democrats working with you?
Well, we'll see if there are grown-up Democrats in the Senate. They try to claim that they are. I mean, I think they understand the peril of that, and there won't be any way politically for them to get out of it because it will be the Schumer shutdown. I mean, we send the CR over from the House. It's on him. So you'll need 7 Democrats to join with the 53 Senate Republicans to make sure the government remains in operation. And that's his decision. So I think they understand the weight of that decision and that everybody in the country will be watching.
Marie.
I mean, just to be clear, Democrats don't control any lever of power. You were right in the A block when you said Republicans won a victory across the board. So if the government shuts down, I think a lot of Democrats would say, but we're not in control. You are. And I guess to the second part of what you said about, look, I support a clean CR. I think that's the smart thing to do for the government. That next negotiation that you mentioned of negotiating how to cut government spending. What do you say to those? It's not just a few, 6,000 plus veterans who've been fired by the federal government, who were doing their jobs, who were showing up. What do you say to the people across the country who work for the VA, who can't man the suicide hotline now because Elon has fired them? Like, what is your message to them? Because they're getting mad at Republicans.
Yeah, look, we have to take care of our veterans, and the VA needs employees who are doing this noble work. I think the president kind of did a recalibration yesterday. He brought in Elon and he brought in the cabinet secretaries, and they had a dialogue about the process. You have to formalize more of this. Now, look, in Elon's defense, there is no playbook for what he's doing. This has never been done before. So as he acknowledged, there are going to be some mishaps and mistakes along the way, but we will do course correction immediately, and that's what you'll see.
Yep, and President Trump emphasized that he is looking to keep the good, hardworking individuals. All right, President Trump is still speaking to reporters in the Oval Office. First, he talked about the new jobs report. Now he's moved on to the war in Ukraine, so this is wide-ranging. And Trump says he's finding it more difficult to deal with Ukraine and that they need to get on the ball. We're also learning that administration officials will meet with the Ukrainian side in Saudi Arabia next week. We'll bring you these remarks when we get them. We're outnumbered in a moment.
Well, President Trump is now saying that DOGE should be a scalpel rather than a hatchet. He's telling his cabinet secretaries to exercise precision when making cuts. Watch.
I want the cabinet members to keep good people. I don't want to see a big cut where a lot of good people are cut. I want the cabinet members to keep the good people, and the cabinet members go first. And if they can cut, it's better. And if they don't cut, then Elon will do the cutting.
And just when you thought this might have been put to bed, it's not, because apparently some people think DOGE is racist.
Yes, it's an attack on government, but it's also an attack on this government. What I mean by that is it's an attack on this government that used to be headed by a black man. It's an attack on this government that almost elected a black woman to the highest office in the land. It's an attack on a government that has been more welcoming and more supportive of people who have come to this country in search for a better life.
Yes, DOGE is racist now, despite poll numbers showing that the majority of Americans support it.
This, to me, was one of the more shocking figures that I saw. Made me go, wait a minute, hold on one second. Whoa! Americans on Trump and Joe's efforts. Musk and DOGE should influence government spending and operations. Look at this. 54%. The majority say that he and they should. How about approve of Trump trying to cut staff at government agencies? Again, you get a majority here. 51%.
Again, you get a majority, Mr. Speaker. And so how can this be racist?
It's patently absurd for them to say this has anything whatsoever to do with race. It has to do with government largesse. The government is too big. It does too many things, and it does almost nothing well. And so what Elon has been able to do is crack the code. I mentioned earlier that Congress has not been able to do its oversight responsibility for decades because the bureaucracy has been hiding the data. I mean, we didn't know that USAID was funding transgender operas in Peru. I mean, obviously, everyone would have struck that down. So Elon has gotten inside. He is algorithms crawling through the data. As he says, the data doesn't lie. And the American people are with us on this. It is absurd to say that this is anything other than restoring fiscal sanity. And we are long overdue in getting that done.
Because at the end of the day, Marie, isn't fiscal responsibility, isn't the dollar, the whole point is it is bipartisan.
Sure. I think, look, I worked in the federal government for 10 years. There are certainly ways it could be more efficient. This is moving fast and breaking things and hurting a lot of people in the process. And the government shouldn't be in the business of firing a veteran who served their country for 20 years and then having to fix it later. I don't trust that it will fix it later. I just don't. And you can come up, look, there are a lot of comical things that President Trump mentioned in the State of the Union that you mentioned about the government was spending money on. A lot of things that are getting cut are cancer research. Support for scientists across this country saving the lives of children with cancer. That's just one. So we can talk about cuts, but doing it this way hurts Americans. It's irresponsible. And quite frankly, that's why you see not just paid protesters, with all due respect, some constituents in Republican districts who are coming to these town halls and saying, I'm a veteran. I lost my job. I have come to work every day. How can you? And Elon Musk makes millions of dollars every day from the American government. And you're firing these people.
Do you agree this is racist, or do you feel...
Oh, no, I don't think it's racist. Sorry.
Okay.
I didn't answer that part of the question. No, I just think it's irresponsible and harmful.
Well, stay tuned, because it's going to be corrected. And I've talked to Elon about this personally, and many of us have it. He has completely pure motives. He's trying to make the government work better for the people. All the people, and the essential employees and the people doing great work will come back.
Because isn't that sort of the part of the concept we've been covering all morning, Kayleigh, is the fact that everyone is equal in the eyes of this administration, and especially given that this is the most historically diverse administration actually ever. So at what point will the Democrats learn that their tired talking points are not accurate and they are not working?
Here's the bottom line. We have $36 trillion in debt. Democrats have expressed zero interest in fixing that. So what Democrats are saying is, Kayleigh, we want your 5-year-old daughter, Blake, and we want your 2-year-old son, Nash, to be stuck with the absolutely profligate credit card we have chosen to ring up consistently. So it's easy to point out low-hanging fruit. It's going to be a messy process. President Trump has expressed, I'm going to, take the lead. We're going to use a scalpel. But it is irresponsible to saddle the children of this country with the reckless spending of Hakeem Jeffries. The Democrats and Republicans have done it, too. Now we're getting serious. Do not leave my 5-year-old, my 2-year-old with your debt. Yeah.
Amen. Wow. Can you come to the floor and give that?
I'll do it.
Yes, fantastic. Exactly right. We're derelict in our duty if we pass this along. Yep. Deficits have been growing, and we've got to get that in check. This is our opportunity to do it, and that's what we're so excited about.
Yeah, you had a great point about USAID and how this can't be put in a box. Now people know about that spending, but many Americans do feel differently about the NIH spending, for instance, sure, because these labs are in their backyards, and they're wondering about what's going to be cut. But as you mentioned, I think hopefully in the coming weeks we'll see a lot of clarity coming out of both Congress and the DOGE effort.
We will, and funding NIH research is a cost-saving measure. You're investing there. You find a cure, then you bring down cost of health care, and that's what it's all about. So the good work of the government, as you heard the president himself say clearly, we want to fund that. What we're doing right now is identifying what are the good categories and the bad categories, and I think that's something that is long overdue.
More of this amazing show with our esteemed guest, Speaker Mike Johnson, next. Stay with us.
We are moments away from those remarks from the Oval Office we've been telling you about. President Trump covered everything from the economy to Ukraine, and as soon as we get them, we will bring them to you. He even took some questions from reporters, so it is bound to be interesting. We'll play those for you when we get them. In the meantime, we start here with a big topic of discussion politically, and that is Gen Z and social media and TikTok. It was a big discussion during the election. President Trump driving up his numbers with Gen Z, and you have Democrats trying to counter that. We showed you a video yesterday. We'll play this now for you. House Speaker Mike Johnson, you may or may not have seen it. These are Democrats who are choosing, it's called Choose Your Fighter. And this is their effort to win back young people. And one thing I wanted to ask you about, and people don't know this, you've been talking to influencers, to these TikTokers, to these social media individuals. I know this because my sister has had several meetings with these other influencers with you. And I was very impressed that, this effort isn't just coming from the president of the United States saying, hey, there's podcasts out there I need to get on. It seems like even in the House of Representatives, you're focusing on reaching young people.
Yeah, we are. And your sister Ryan's fantastic. And she joined a big group just yesterday, I think it was 2 days ago, I was visiting with him. We bring him in and we sit down and have authentic, real conversations. We don't do dance videos. It's ridiculous. I mean, that is so cringeworthy. To Democrats, most Democrats now, politics is a performance art. It's like performative art. But if that's the performance, please continue to do that, because as the leading campaigner for the House Republicans, I'd like to see a lot more of that from them. That's fantastic.
And with President Trump, it was Alex Brusewitz who had this idea for this big podcast strategy. And he ran up to Trump on the golf course. And Trump said, does Barron know about this? And Barron Trump was looped in, and they came up with a list of these podcasts that were huge. I would argue one of the top 10 reasons he won the election was this strategy. I'm curious, as you keep in touch with these people, some of these very same people that were determinative, what are you hearing from them?
Well, look, this next generation behind us, is so thirsty for authenticity. They just see all this performance stuff, and it's detestable to them, and they want something that's real. And in a podcast format, you can't hide. It's just very authentic. You can't follow a script. You just have to sit down and speak. And the problem is, many of the leaders on the left can't do that. They can't sit down and have a dialogue, because what they really think and feel is opposed by the people. So it's a great format for us. We want to explore that even more. And if I had more time, I'd do one every day. But we're trying to schedule that in and make sure that we're reaching those audiences, because they need to hear what we're about. I genuinely believe our policies are better for everyone. And the more that we can explain that and demonstrate it, the better off the country is going to be.
And the White House responded to the Choose Your Fighter video. We'll play this as we speak. And you can see that they did their own fighters, but these were fighters that were selected by the American people in the form of a vote for the president. One of the fighters you'll see as we talk is Vice President J.D. Vance. And you had this moment where you followed him into the Oval Office for the very first time. And I remember the first time I walked in, and it was vivid. You pass this grandfather mahogany clock. You're on this sunbeam pattern rug from the Reagan administration. It kind of takes your breath away. Such a historic place. What led you to take that video?
Well, we had met. It was the day after the inauguration, and J.D. and I met, and Leader Thune from the Senate, John, was there. We were waiting on the president. He came in and he said, let's go do this in the Oval Office. I said, fantastic. We were walking down the hallway, and J.D. just happens to mention, I've never been in there. And I said, you've got to be kidding me, man. I got to video this. So I got out the phone and videoed him walking in, and you saw his reaction on that tape. It's, as everyone, you walk in for their first time, you go, wow, only in America can a kid from Appalachia with his background walk into the Oval for the first time as the elected vice president. It was just an incredible moment. I'm glad we caught it on tape.
Yeah, we're about 60 seconds away from those Q&A with the president of the United States with reporters. But as we do that kid from Appalachia took on the president of Ukraine and asked him some very challenging questions. And I'm curious, as we are about 60 seconds out, we know Ukraine's about to be mentioned. What has your interaction with Zelensky been?
Well, I was stunned by what happened there. I thought that he would come in and gratefully accept this incredible mineral rights deal that the president had come up with. It's the only way to, I think, navigate through and find peace in that conflict. I hope that he does an about face, as we see that he's done, and he comes with the right attitude to accept that, and that we can move this forward. President Trump is the only figure in the world powerful enough to make that happen.
You think that mineral rights deal will happen?
I'm very optimistic that it will.
Yeah, I'm optimistic as well. Emily, a quick question.
As we've discussed a lot of the Democrats' sort of tenor right till now, will you describe what is the biggest challenge at this moment for you in this day-to-day effectuation of the Americans' mandate via the president?
And here are President Trump with those remarks.